the advisory-based flood elevation maps and getting those maps correct as we move forward because of the dramatic impact on the rebuilding of our community as well as the impact on future flood insurance rates. The Congressman has talked to a number of our residents. He's heard from us as well as other representatives of government. We're joined this morning by our Freeholder Director Frank Formica and Congressman John Runyan as we embark hopefully on making some reform efforts to make sure that flood insurance is available and affordable and that the advisory flood elevation maps are correct with the best available science for the residents of Brigantine and certainly the residents of the state of New Jersey. And it's my honor at this time to introduce our Congressman Frank.
As we all can keenly remember there at the end of October what we were hit with, and shortly in the aftermath of the storm hitting us, President Obama brought in Director Biggert, and we were actually, about 2 blocks from here, along the bay with the President and the Director in discussions about what we were going to do for the rebuilding of New Jersey and the Northeast in the aftermath of Sandy. We went through some pretty trying process with the emergency supplemental. Some of you may have remembered the contentious debate that took place, but that was a necessary first step that we were able to get accomplished along. Now our problems sort of break into 3 areas. The problems break into that which happened immediately with the storm and the federal agencies that are involved with helping that out, FEMA and the Federal Flood Insurance Plan. It also involves the new maps that are being overlaid, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and what we're doing to try to work on that. But what we're really about here today is the National Flood Insurance Program. The National Flood Insurance Program, after Katrina and several of the other big storms in other parts of the country, was actually going broke. They got to close to $30 billion in the red, unsustainable. Since 2008, the National Flood Insurance Program went through almost 20 extensions with 2 actual lapses. And in those lapses, there were something like 40,000 settlements that could not take place, and a lot of confusion and uncertainty. All the stakeholders got together after several years of debate and decided that we really had to have a national flood insurance program, not just for the Northeast, but for the entire country, and decided on the Biggert-Waters Act, as it's referred to now, as a way to get the federal flood insurance plan to solvency and to have a national program. New Jersey delegation and myself voted for it, knowing that the alternative was no program at all. And those who voted against it did not have problems with the particulars of the program. They were the members of Congress who wanted no federal involvement with flood insurance at all. In fact, the senator from Oklahoma is the one who was responsible for a number of the lapses that took place because he sought no federal involvement whatsoever. So this legislation, which I've introduced, essentially takes the federal flood insurance premium increases, which are 25% a year for 4 years, and extends it to 8 years at 12.5% a year to ease the burden of the impact. Now, it's very specifically designed and planned not to reopen the original legislation, because reopening the original legislation is likely to mean another debate with those who want no program at all, which could result in having this whole thing go away, meaning the National Flood Insurance Program, which would be an unmitigated disaster. So Congressman Runyan has joined me here today along with the New Jersey delegation, and John's going to speak in a minute about why this is important, and we think it'll help ease the burden for those who are going to face these increases while still being able to keep a national flood insurance program. Another part of this that we talked about, the mayor talked about, and he's worked on very hard with a lot of our other mayors, and let me take this opportunity to thank the local elected officials, both county and Frank Formica, who has worked on us. This has generated a lot of anxiety because the velocity zones don't match with what we think they ought to be. After a meeting with Director Biggert a couple of weeks ago with his top people in the office, They have promised us that the maps they have circulated so far will be matched up against what each individual town. So Mayor Gunther in Brigantine has an idea of what Brigantine's map should be. FEMA's map is different than that. Mr. Fugate promised, guaranteed, assured me that they would take Brigantine and any other municipality and work with them to get to a final map that is in agreement with both FEMA and, more importantly, the local elected officials and the residents who are going to have to live with these new maps. Because a lot of the rebuilding, we know, will be dependent upon how these final maps are interpreted and what the results are. So we're going to continue to work on this. There are a lot of good people who have been involved. And I want to thank Mayor Gunther for allowing us to be here in Brigantine.
And again, I think Congressman LoBiondo really covered a gamut of it, but what I really want to talk about is this process. And you talk about Superstorm Sandy and it being a perfect storm. When you add the level of obviously what FEMA was doing with the flood elevation maps being on top of that, that adds another complexity to the whole thing, and being able to try to figure out how we're going to rebuild. We've all been here and know that this process is moving very slow, and it's I'm honored to be a co-sponsor of this legislation to give us a little more certainty and a little more elbow room, especially with our finances, to be able to move forward. I know members of the New Jersey and New York delegations, along with Congressman Pascrell, early on put out a tax bill that would give us some of the tax incentives that would also allow to do this. I know everybody's on a letter to leadership to help us try to ignite that fire again, doing a lot of what we're doing here, easing the burden on the implementation of these increases to the flood insurance program, but now also, you know, going through what that bill that Congressman Pascrell put out early on that took the good things out of the Katrina disaster, those tax-free community. I mean, when you look at the industry here, and a lot of it relates to tourism dollars. It's a $34 billion a year industry we have here in Jersey, and it's going to take a hit this year. And anything we can do to lessen the burden to our businesses and our homeowners here is going to help us. And you know, this is one small step. It's going to be a challenge, as Frank said. There are people that don't believe in programs like this, and I think, you know, with the number of you have 400 members of Congress that voted for this, it was a change. I've personally had friends of mine call from Ohio, dealing with the same issues of the burden the new flood insurance program put on us. But it is a thing to. There was a plan to make it solvent and be able to move forward and still have a plan there. So when you do have a disaster like this, you do have the ability to rebuild. So it's been an honor to be here, and thank you all for coming.
The delegation is working on this, and this part of it is led by Bill Pascrell. After Katrina, we found that in the disaster-related areas for Katrina, there were special tax breaks that were really needed to get businesses and individuals back on their feet. So Bill Pascrell and some others have been taking. The question is about the settlements for those who are national flood insurance policy holders. That's separate and aside from the legislation we're doing. Initially, there was a question of whether the National Federal Flood Insurance Program had the money to pay out the claims, which they did not. And that was part of the very contentious debate that John Runyan and I and some of our colleagues had to go through with members of Congress getting this passed. So once we were able to get it passed and have the funds replenished, of course, we're dealing with the bureaucracy of the National Flood Insurance Program. We have had some complaints. If there are additional complaints, if the individuals will bring them to my office, we'll be happy to try to run interference for them in trying to get a positive settlement or a positive conclusion. I can't help if I don't know what those problems are.